Welcome back to my channel, everyone. Sri Tips here. And what we have is a bin full of gold-plated silver jewelry. And what we're going to do today is we're going to recover the gold off of this gold-plated silver jewelry. So what I'm going to do to start this out is it's got stones and springs and non-metallic material in here. And so what I'm going to try to do is get all this stuff out mechanically and clean it up. And then we're going to show you how to get the gold off of this gold-plated silver jewelry. As I sort through the scrap jewelry that we accumulate, whenever I find a piece of gold-plated silver jewelry, I throw it in this bin. And I save it up until I've got enough to try to do a recovery to get the gold off separately. And this will be a lot like gold-filled scrap in that we'll be using nitric acid to dissolve the silver. However, unlike gold-filled scrap, the silver takes much less nitric acid. So we'll be using a lot less nitrate to recover this gold. I've got all the material cleaned up as best I can. Tried to take out all the steel springs, all the larger stones, and stuff like that. So here is our gold-plated silver material. Before we even start any of this, so we can get a yield, here we go. Looks like we've got 861 grams of gold-plated silver scrap jewelry. All right, we're going to offer this for sale on my eBay site. This is all silver jewelry. It's got stones that are embedded in it that's hard to get out. And what I was going to do is just throw this in a crucible and melt it all, and then get all the junk out of there. See, you got some wax inside of some of these thick pieces like this. I'm just going to sell this just like it is. It's sterling silver jewelry, 925 jewelry, and it's got stones in it and stuff. And let's see what we got for a weight on this. Looks like we've got 1,889 grams of scrap silver jewelry. We're just going to let it go just like this. Let it go for bids. I'll put a link in the description of this video. All right, let's dump this out and show you exactly what it is that you're going to be bidding on. This is all sterling silver stuff. And like I said, it's got stuff set in it real deep that's hard to dig out. Anything that, like these hematite pieces like that right there, those aren't easy to get out of there. And so I'm just going to go ahead and let this is all sterling silver, marked sterling silver. I'm just going to let this all go for scrap. We'll start the bidding at 99 cents. And you'll have to clean it all up, but it is sterling silver material. Some of it might be decent. Most of it's going to be missing stones or have problems. It's going to be scrap, most of it. And so what we'll do is we'll list this on my eBay site, and we'll let this go for bids. Here we go. We're going to fire up the steamer and then come over here. And I've got my ultrasonic cleaner. And we're going to put some of this jewelry. It helps to clean it up like this in the ultrasonic. Just gets the junk off of there. And helps. We're trying to get clean metal here, so it helps to clean it up like this to begin with. Stick it right down in here. And let it rip. Well, it's bound to happen one day, and it slipped off my little pedestal I had there. And of course, it was the bottom of the batch that had all the little bitty tiny pieces that will fit right down into the drain and go into the drain pipe. I got most of it here, so we're going to steam it off right quick. Now we'll add this to the rest of the batch. I've allowed the material to dry off back here in our little dish with a little bit of heat. So now what we're going to do is get a weight on this. There's the weight of the dish. We'll reweigh it. We've got 1765. So that means we've got 1765 minus 912.5. So we got 825 or 852. We started with 861 before we built that stuff down the drain. So we lost about 6 grams of material. That's not that much. I'll get it out of there. I'll take the drain apart and get it out of there. We're going to start this out by adding some distilled water to our beaker back here. Put about just under 1 liter, and this process is going to be very similar to gold filled scrap. What we're going to do now is take a handful of this gold plated silver jewelry, put it in this crucible. We're going to burn it to get all the any combustible material burnt off of the silver. Now what we'll do is set the material up here on a heat source. I think it takes roughly 1.2 milliliters of nitric acid. So what we got here, we got 852 grams of material times 1.2 milliliters of nitric. So we're going to be using about 1 liter, just over 1 liter of nitric acid to get all that silver out of there. Let me add just a little bit more water here. This is our nitric acid delivery apparatus. It's just a separatory funnel with a little tube connected to the bottom. Make sure the valve is off first. And now what we'll do is add half a liter of nitric acid to this funnel. I've got a brick on the bottom of this ring stand to stabilize it, counteract the weight of the nitric. I'm just going to insert this into our fume hood now. Put the pipe down into the beaker. I've got a cover on the beaker. And now what we'll do is reach up here and start dripping the nitric acid in slowly. And just allow this to feed small amounts of nitric acid into the material. We'll put this on time lapse now. We're just going to let this react. I noticed that the valve was leaking a little bit of nitric. And so when halfway through this, when I refilled it, I took it apart, took the valve apart, and put a new rubber retainer, just used rubber band to hold that thing in place, and put some new grease on it, and I was able to repair the leak. I've got almost a whole liter in there now, and you can look up here and see that the nitric is almost completely drained down in here. I'm going to go ahead and drain the rest of it in. Now that all the silver's gone out of there, it's not as critical to add it real slow, so I should just be able to let this flow right on in. And then what I'm going to do once I get all the nitric in here is just let the crank the heat up on it a little bit. There's the last bit of nitric acid. And now we'll crank the heat up on this thing and just let it boil until all the fumes disappear in there. I've had this on boiling now for a couple hours, and I think we got everything pretty much dissolved. Those are all our gold foils that are floating around in there. All of the fumes have cleared up. Let me get down in here and see if I can get it. Yeah, I think all that down there in the bottoms is real loose. So it's pretty much close to being done. We're going to kill the power now. Let this cool off, and we'll proceed from here. I've got a funnel with a filter paper in it set up down here, and now I've allowed this stuff to settle overnight, and I've got an interesting development in here. If you can see that, those are pure silver nitrate crystals that have formed as the solution cooled. They're pretty neat looking. I'm using a marker to stick underneath the beaker to tilt the fluid towards the front. Got a plastic tube full of water, distilled water. And what we're going to do is siphon this liquid off now down into my filter. I've got a hurricane going on, so I might lose power right in the middle of this. Here we go. Got most of the liquid down here in this filter. That's going to have a ton of silver in it. I mean, we had 850 grams of gold-plated material, gold-plated sterling silver. So most of that liquid is going to be silver. Here's a look at those silver nitrate crystals in there. They're fairly spectacular looking. And then down at the bottom, of course, you can see our gold foils, and that's our prize. That's the gold that we want to try to recover from this scrap. Here's what's down in the filter so far. A little bit of sediment from the beaker. So now what we'll do is pour off our material. Those are the crystals there. They are highly soluble in water. So those will just dissolve as we spray some water on them. Try to get this stuff down into the beaker, down into the filter rather. like. I'll have to exclude that. Get it out of there later. It's like a piece of spring steel. We'll exclude this from the batch. This took a long time to pull through this filter. So while it was doing that, I went out and cleaned up the hurricane debris that was all over our street and all over our yard. And I accumulated a fairly decent sized pile of yard debris. And when it dries out, I'll burn it, and then I'll do a filter paper recovery video using that fire to incinerate my filters. I've got all the liquid pulled out of here, got it rinsed out fairly well. So now this is going to contain silver. I'll just add a piece of copper to this and cement it out on copper, and then we'll melt it into shot and run it through the silver cell. Right now, for this stuff, what we'll do is just take this out. There's our gold foils. And what we're going to do is just put this in a melt dish and get ready to do an incineration. I've got the oven nice and hot in here. So now what we're going to do is take our gold foils down in this piece of paper here. And I'm going to put this in the oven and incinerate the material before we proceed. It's been in there about 15 minutes. Oh yeah, we got it nice and hot. Everything is properly incinerated. I'm going to set it up here and let it cool off. Material is cooled off now, and we're ready for the refining. I'm going to use a 1 liter beaker. I'm going to transfer the material now down into this 1 liter beaker. I've done this before, but I cannot remember what the yields were. I'm adding some hydrochloric acid, and let's go with about 150 milliliters maybe. And we're going to put our gold and hydrochloric acid mixture up here on the heat source. I've got some sulfuric acid, small shot of that to help us precipitate out any lead that may be present. I put a stir bar in there, but I'm going to leave the stirring off for right now. I'm adding some nitric acid. I'm going to put 3 milliliter shots of nitric acid in here, and we're going to see how that does for a few minutes for us. got everything to dissolve here. I've got all the fumes to clear up. Take this down and let it cool off. Let's reach down in here and get some of this solution on a piece of filter paper. I'm going to test it, make sure we've got golden solution. Oh, dark stain. We've got gold in solution. Looks like there may be some undissolved pieces of gold up in here. Get this stir bar out of here. Well, at least it's pulling through the filter fairly quickly for me. Let's get the funnel off of here. You can see that there's some pieces of karat gold in here. And we'll get that out later on. I'm not going to worry about it for this. I'm just going to set this back out of the way. Solution looks good, nice and clear. It's green because there's probably some copper in there still. I'm going to transfer it into this 2-liter beaker. Got some ferrous sulfate here from a previous video. Now what we're going to do is just add this ferrous sulfate. This is stuff that we dissolved in a previous video, filtered it. I already had hydrochloric acid in the other video, so it's all ready to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and dump this in to the gold solution right now. I'm only expecting 3, maybe 4 grams of pure gold from this solution. So I'm going to add the ferrous sulfate in now. See what happens. Stir. I added maybe half of the ferrous sulfate. So now let's go down, get inside here, get a little bit of this solution on a piece of filter paper. Let's see if we've got all the gold dropped out of here now or not. I don't see anything. No reaction, tells me all the gold has been precipitated. out here settling for about a half hour now, and I think what we're going to do is transfer this. I want some heat over here, and see if we can boil this to get it to settle out a little quicker for us. Here we go. I think we've got this settled out enough. I'm going to go ahead and pour off this waste solution now. Get a look at the gold. See what we got going on in here. Very much, that's for sure. Just a tiny smidge down on the bottom of the beaker here. Get it all rinsed off, and then I'll put it into a melt dish. We'll melt this up into a little butt and let that settle out for a second. It's suspending. I think I'll transfer it into a smaller beaker, so it's a little easier to handle. Got this to settle out a little bit, and now what we'll do is I'm just going to go over here to my waste container. There's our gold down in there. Pour off this little bit of liquid. I'm going to put a filter in this funnel up here. I'm going to collect the gold in this filter. And we're going to get this into a melt dish and melt this up into a button. Our gold down in this filter. So now what we'll do is transfer it, filter paper and all, into this melt dish. I'm going to take this over to the melt table and melt this up so that we can get a yield. Here's our little button that we just melted, recovered from the silver jewelry. It's got some obvious contamination on the surface there. And we weren't going for high purity here, we were just going for a recovery. Let's hope we get 3.2 grams. So let's see what kind of yield we got here. We got 3.2 grams divided by 852 is what we started with. That's 0.0037 or 1/3 of 1% yield from that 852 grams of silver jewelry. And we'll just set this aside then, and I'll throw it in with my next batch of carat scrap and re-refine it. Okay, this will conclude the video. Thank you for watching.